Hi there. You might not know me. I don't like owning it. I kind of distance myself from the label quite often. But you see that? That is Xenoblade 2. I'm working my way through it as we speak. Um, yeah. So I don't really tend to use the word gamer. I think because of the fact that like everybody else, I definitely do reflect on the fact that I find that the label is a little bit too limiting. I mean, like I do a lot more than play video games, to say the least. I mean, hobby wise, I mean, I'm into a lot of things, but I would pretty much own being an RPG enthusiast who's been curious about this whole monolith soft thing, who wants to learn more about the whole thing, and the split from Square, who does sort of feel like Square Enix. They may still be knocking it out of the park in certain spaces, but I've been seeing a lot more misses than I'm used to seeing from them, unfortunately, as a company. But then, I think back and I'm like, is that just nostalgia painting my lens here? And I'm like, oh, wait, it is, because remember Mystic Quest? Like, back during the SNES era, like they had, and even the PlayStation era, they released like Brave Fencer Musashi. Ugh. You know, not so positive regards towards those games. You don't see me like bashing a lot of them really hard though, because of the fact that I realize that they do have their fandoms, and like if I come out here and make a video that's like really anti like Quest 64, I mean I do have compassion for the people that love that game, even if I don't myself. Like I hated the N64 because it didn't have any like I stay within that niche. I didn't really tend to go outside of it very often at all, to say the least. I'm a bit of a purist who's been like curious about getting back into uh, pen and paper, and going in the direction of Dungeons and Dragons with a crew of my own if I could find some people to do it with. But all of that stated, this video was going to be about why I have some strong feelings of resentment towards first person shooters. And you know I I want to explain this all to you guys because of the fact that I don't want this to come off like, I've just got issues with the first person shooters because of the fact that, I don't like the style or something, or that there's like a stylistic or completely irrelevant reason why I have lingering feelings of resentment towards, the first person shooters and as a genre, and their fans. There are, you know, usually most of the people who hate them, they don't usually have like reasons that are actually good or moral justifications for what they put forward. But like personally, I can't stand them. I'm getting sick of it, and the reason why I can't stand them is that we how do I put this? I am a Linux enthusiast. I'm a fan of it as an operating system. I like it. I would make my case for Linux on the basis of the fact that Linux is more about software freedom, and so which distro should I switch to is a bad question in the first place. As the mental outlaw has pointed out, because it's about embracing individual freedom and fighting for it. How you want to use a computer should be up to you. You own it. It's about fighting for that principle. It doesn't belong to somebody else. It belongs to its user. And that's, what Linux is really about. And so when you come up here and you talk about like which distro should I switch to, you're already missing the point. You should know what distro you want to switch to. You know, and my recommendation would be to look at all of them and compare them. I mean, for me, it's like I use Kali at the moment, but that's because of the fact that I've got an enduring interest in hacking. It's just me personally. I'm not on it right now. I use Windows to, in part because, like, as a person that's a little bit interested in maybe professionally entering the space of computing at some point, knowing how to use Windows is pretty essential too. I mean, it's So I use both. I'm defensive of the fact that at least Microsoft has gotten more stable over time, but I definitely do like Linux. I've been, advocating it for a while now. I've been a fan of open source software and the open source software movement, and Libre software in particular is definitely something that I admire, and I homage to Richard Stallman for the work that he's done in that space and GCC and everything else. Um, all of that stated, I so if you know the history of Linux, you know about Wine, right? The Windows emulator. You know about gaming on Linux. Did you know that there was a paid version of Wine called Wine X for a while, and then Wine X got rolled up into Sadiga, and at the time, basically there was like a 12.99 subscription fee that you would sign up to Sadiga with, and you would sign up for Sadiga, and then you would get a vote on what you wanted, essentially there to be supported, or what they wanted to do development, to adapt the emulator into, being able to support. And so, we were kind of we were able to afford the 12.99. We weren't going to be able to afford buying up, 6 million votes. And so what happened ultimately back during that experience that I went through, that engendered this just vicious hatred for first person shooters, that it's not even like normal hatred where it's like I don't like the way these games work or the way that these function. It's like a grudge against first person shooters. Well, see, the thing is that Doom may have been innovative and original when it was released, and the Duke Nukem of the old world, but now it's seen so many spin-offs and clones and attempts to stretch that idea beyond its normal limits and everything, that it sees one more attempt every single month. And the reason why that was a problem was Sadiga's developers would work on things for about a month when you voted for something, but what happened was the vote would happen once a month, and every single month the whole thing was basically rigged against us, because there was a whole crew of people that wanted to see the things Ynex, pushed in the direction of supporting a first person shooter. And I personally was impressed by the fact that first person shooter gamers were able to even figure fucking Linux out in the first place. I mean, that is something I wouldn't have expected of that particular demographic, but they managed to pull that one off. you know, uh, Kudos to them for that much. Because Linux is not really, it's not for everybody. And I'm not advocating it like it's for everybody, but my argument, as far as it's concerned, is just that some of the most important computers in the world run it. I mean, it's the servers of the world that depend on this. And if you've got software that you can't really have a downtime for to reboot, and you don't want to be rebooting frequently, or responsible for rebooting constantly, then you're not going to run Windows. You're not going to run that particular application on Windows, because, in order to update a Windows system, it goes through this whole process that's difficult to delay the updates on, where, you can't leave it on, and you can't even leave it unattended for too long. Otherwise, it will force you through the update process, whereas on Linux, the freedom to update is left up to the user, to the point where it's like, it's not going to update anything or force a reboot on me until I go and type in sudo apt-get update, sudo apt-get upgrade, over there on that side of things. And so that's nice. That's an upside of using it. But I mean, and so, I like that particular part about the operating system, and that's my distro. That's how you update it over on Kali. It won't be forever. Hopefully one day it will be a merge. As my that I use to do things, so that I use Gentoo's packet manager, because Gentoo is the one that appeals to me the most. I'm I guess you could say that like I don't like Arch. I'm not an Arch enthusiast. I don't know why, it has everything, and I disagree with the Arch enthusiast in that, I get the appeal, but for me compiling everything myself is more appealing because this laptop runs Windows. If I want to watch something while it's compiling itself, I can do that. I can have multiple devices. This is the most obvious. So it's compiling on one system, and I'm watching something else on the other while it's doing the work of building the system, and I can go do other things while it's compiling, and I've got plenty of other things to actually do and keep my mind from melting while it's going through the compile process. And then plus I get the upside of using use flags, and setting the compiler up the way that I want to set the damn compiler up, to exclude software that I don't want. I mean, like, if I'm not going to use KDE or, GNOME, why do I need, the packages to support those particular, desktop environments? Like, I don't need to support that stuff except, if it's a dependency of something that I do run, and then at that point I'll fix that particular issue when the time comes to fix that particular issue. Like you know what I mean? Like, Linux is about freedom. That's really what it's about. That's really the ethos of the whole thing. And you don't get into Linux overnight. I mean, it's an experience that you slowly get into. Nobody holds your hand through it. You can ask for help, but a lot of the times you won't get an answer. So, you're going to have to figure things out for yourself a lot of the time. And a lot of the time, that's going to come down to reading the fucking manual. So, you know, I uh, I like it as an operating system. I've come to like it. I think it's come a long way over the time that I've been, interested in it. The learning curve is not what I expected it to be. It's not anywhere near as steep as my initial impression of it was. Like, it's a lot better of an operating system than it was when it was originally conceived of like 20 fucking years ago. It's come a long way. It's become a much better product over time. It's gotten a lot better at supporting things, and it's catching up. I mean, it's not happening overnight to Windows, but its gaming support is coming along. It's come a long way. I mean, you won't be able to play today's releases with it, obviously, but if you don't need today's releases, on the machine, it's not as big of an issue. And, as far as being a quote unquote gamer is concerned, I mean, I play a Chia sometimes. Do you know what a Chia is? It's a fucking multi user dungeon where there are no graphics. It's all just text, scrolling text on the screen where you type commands into, much like the command line. I mean, I don't need all that. Like, so I've become like a retro gamer. Like, most of the stuff that I play, isn't going to be, on the PC something that came out yesterday. Like, that's just not going to be an experience that I go through. Like, it just wasn't a thing for me. I wasn't going to go through, so I look at all this, but I like Sadiga, like, every month, the support, the paid support would taken over by the fucking first person shooter gamers who would vote it out. And that meant, okay, today I can run Final Fantasy 11 on Linux. I can't necessarily run its third party applications. At least the last time I used it about a year ago, it hadn't caught up with .NET. I should check again because it is chugging along. The bugs in support have come a long way. By now they'll have come even further. But I wasn't able to get some of the third party applications that I use because I don't use I know that you're not supposed to per the rules, but I definitely use the Windower, and a few of the plugins. I'm not so good at playing Bard, so I use a bot. I'll be playing the game at the same time, obviously in control of my character, but my character is being bot assisted, but I'm playing Bard, so that I don't do a shit job at handling, you know, the process, when I'm over there in Final Fantasy 11 doing things that way. But I can't get those third party applications up and running on it yet because their development is more recent than development that we've been seeing for Final Fantasy 11 itself. So the game itself definitely runs on Linux, but some of the third party applications that became pretty essential to my playstyle, you know, don't run on it. So it's a little bit. But see, we wouldn't be in this. We would not be in this boat. Like Wine would have supported Final Fantasy 11 like years and years and years before it actually did manage to support it if it hadn't been for the first person shooter community. And the thing that I hate the most about them is that they're all flavor of the week, like, and what I mean is more like flavor of the month, but y- you know that's a first person shooter for you. Like you can plot out the year in such a way where you can think about first person shooter releases and you will find one for January, February, March, April, every month of the year. There's going to be one in which the community of gamers that love that particular genre of games are gaga over, and it's just, I mean, the one good thing that I'll say about them is that in the early days, there wasn't much of a storyline associated with them. Now they've started to get stories.